Every deadlock seems impossible to resolve until you remember to start looking at the process, not the problem. So this is not something that's uncommon to those of you who negotiate in a business context. You run into these scenarios where things just go quiet, right? So either you get stuck and there's no movement, or your counterpart just goes quiet, you don't hear anything from them because there was some kind of disagreement and now there's no movement. You're in an impasse or things are deadlocked. How do you get out of this? How do you create momentum? Now, the way most people think about this is they think, okay, let me go improve my argument. I got to find better hooks in my argument. I got to do more research. I got to build a better case because now I'll have to go prove them wrong, right? If I want to create more, momentum towards agreement, I will have to prove to them that their argument is wrong and my argument's correct, and then we'll move forward, right? We'll break the impasse. But of course, that's not how it works, because evidence will never convince your counterpart to move in your direction. Evidence will only incentivize them to find their own evidence to prove your evidence wrong. So there's this universal principle that underpins human nature. It's the principle of reciprocity, and it says that we return to others the form of behavior that they exhibit towards us, right? So if I'm nice to you, probably you'll be nice to me. If I'm going to treat you with a lack of respect and dignity, probably you're going to return the favor. If we're stuck in an argument or an impasse, the more I justify my position, the more I break yours down, the more you will return the favor. And hence, we get stuck in the situation where somebody effectively has to lose face. Somebody has to sacrifice their credibility in order for us to move forward. Think about it. If I'm trying to convince you based on the quality, the validity, the veracity of my argument that you should move in my direction, well, then at some stage you're going to have to admit that your argument maybe wasn't strong enough, that my argument is better, or that I raise a good point. And in that process, you're going to have to sacrifice some of your credibility, right? You're going to lose face to be able to agree with me. And of course, that doesn't happen. So this is why it's so important when you negotiate. I think we forget so easily to focus on how we say what we say. There's so much focus on plumbing the evidence, getting the evidence strong so that we can convince our counterpart to move in our direction because of the evidence. But this is not negotiation. This is litigation, right? If we lead with the evidence, it's litigation. Think about how it works in court. I lead with my evidence, and my adversary, in that case, not necessarily my counterpart, as we say when we negotiate, the defendant or the plaintiff, they will respond with their evidence. So it's evidence, but what happens then? We need a judge. We need a third party to make a decision, because my evidence is not going to convince you, right? So when you see that parties, the plaintiff and the defendant, go at each other in court, you don't see them change their mind and come to the other party's perspective, right? So why would you expect that to happen in business negotiations, right? If you're pummeling somebody with evidence, if you're going all out to prove them wrong, why do you think that they will agree with you? No, these are the situations that end up in deadlock, right? This is where you have to escalate internally then. You have to escalate to your senior management, executive management, etc., to get these things resolved, because you're stuck in an impasse. So let me tell you how to fix the situation. It's actually very simple. It's very simple. There are 3 things that you do to resolve any impasse, right? So number 1, you have to reframe things, right? So obviously, what you've done to this stage has not delivered the result that you wanted. So now you have to reach out to your counterparts, and you have to reframe. You have to focus on what it is that you have in common, right? So you're going to change the focus, the frame, from one where you focused on trying to fix this disagreement, where all the focus has been on the disagreement, and guess what? That disagreement's gotten bigger because you focused on it, and you have to change that frame and that focus to what is shared between the two of you. Let me give you an example. Some of the work I've done with the NHS in the UK over the years, they had parties who were in these situations where they had deadlocks, where they had an impasse, they couldn't move forward. One of the tools, one of the things that I used in that context, I used 2 flip charts. On the one flip chart, I literally write down everything that we agree on, and on the other flip chart, I write down what we are yet to agree on. So I don't even say that we disagree, right? I'm very mindful of the language, of the how. I'm very mindful of the frame. And I try to make sure that on that list of what we agree on, that we have as many items as possible on there. So what are the things we agree on? We agree on meeting 3 times a week until we get resolution. We agree on treating this as a priority. We agree on coming to every meeting with 3 creative ideas. We agree to treating each other with dignity, honor, and respect. Any number of things you can agree on. But the point is, the analogy for this, is that you want to bring focus to that which you want to grow. So if you think of an analogy, let's say you have a rose garden and you have a garden full of weeds. The one that you tend and the one that you water and take care of is the one that's going to grow. So what happens when we get into these deadlocks, into these impasses, into an impasse, is we tend to focus on the problem. We try to come at this problem many different ways, and the problem just becomes bigger because we focus on the problem. We're not focusing on the solutions, right? So, and let me tell you what those are. That's the second point that you're going to go after. So number 1, you're going to reframe this thing, and you're going to make sure that you bring attention to the stuff that you guys agree on. You're going to make sure that there's way more stuff that you agree on than what you disagree on. The second thing you're going to do is you're going to explore the interests once again. You're going to come to the table and say, okay guys, just before we look at practical ways to resolve this again, let's just do a recap of the interests, the things that motivate us here. What are the reasons why you guys want to do this deal? What would make this deal worthwhile for you? Where do you see this thing going in the next 2 to 3 years? What are the things that you think that we can do that would improve the deal from your perspective, that would enable you to move in our direction? So we go into exploring interests again, right? And then thirdly, and this is the key, this is how you create the momentum towards agreement again. You make a concession, right? So if you want somebody to do something for you, following the rule of reciprocity, it means that you have to do something for them first. So what will create forward movement is making a concession. The research, by the way, is clear on this. The number 1 thing that contributes to deal satisfaction is receiving a concession from your counterpart. Why? Why do you think that is the case? Because it signals cooperation, right? So if I make a move in your direction, if I give up something, if I moderate my original expectation and I reduce my expectation somewhere so that it moves in your direction, right? So in favor of your position, I'm reducing my expectations. It signals movement in your direction, cooperation, and therefore significantly increases the likelihood that you'll respond with a concession of your own, okay? This is why we offer concessions. Also, don't make the mistake of thinking that you need to only offer 1 concession, right? The way this works is the research is pretty clear on this. It's not the size of the concession that matters. It's actually the number of concessions that make the biggest difference, right? So instead of, let's just say you're selling something and you got caught in this deadlock now and you need to reduce your price. You don't have to reduce your price by 10%, let's say, a nice round 10%. You could reduce your price, you could offer a reduction of 2.25% to start with. And you can make small reductions. Then you can make another 0.75% reduction, another 0.43%, another 0.22%. The more concessions you make, the more it contributes to your counterpart's satisfaction. Isn't that fascinating? So it's the number of concessions that are more important than the size of the concession. As a matter of fact, if you make too big a concession, it can create dissatisfaction because people feel disappointed that you had such high ambitions maybe, or that you overshot by so much, or that it was so easy for you to make such a big concession. There is a cultural nuance to this, depending on where you are in the world. Maybe if you're in the Middle East or Asia, there's a bigger range for your aspirations. Maybe, if you wanted $100, maybe you'd ask for 110. Let's say in Europe or the US, and maybe if you're in the Middle East, you might be more assertive and ask for 120 or 125. But it's not really the scope of this this particular video, the cultural connotations. But just to register the point that the level of aspiration or the room for negotiation does tend to vary depending on where you are culturally in the world. So geographically, there's an impact on that you need to take into your considerations. You get ready for your negotiations. But the key point here is that concessions are what's going to move this negotiation forward. So to recap on those three things, the first thing you're going to do, you're going to reframe that negotiation, right? And you're going to change that lens. You're going to start focusing on the stuff that brings you together, the stuff that you guys share, not the things that set you apart. That's the first thing you're going to do. The second thing you're going to do, you're going to probe interests. You're going to reconfirm interests. You're going to reconfirm your understanding of their interests. It's even a good idea, if you can, to take it away from the negotiation table. Don't know if you have the ability, if you have this kind of deadlock, to meet people informally somewhere, and what you do is you take business off the agenda completely, and you just interact with people on a personal basis. This is, by the way, this is a great tip if you have important negotiations coming on or coming up, is create an opportunity for you to meet your counterparts before that negotiation, but make sure that you take business off the table, formally. You take business off the table, and you set it up. Even better if you can set it up so you do some kind of team competition together. Like, let's say you play golf and it's two of us and two of them in the same four ball, or we partner up so that we actually play the same team with who will be our counterparts in the upcoming negotiation. I mean, you could do this with temp bowling, you could do this with any kind of leisure activity. If that doesn't work, maybe just around a dinner table or something. Just have some structure in terms of questions you want to ask to get to know people, etc. The whole point behind this is, the way that we build trust, the way that we connect with people is not through talking business, right? It's through getting to know people in an authentic way and also in a vulnerable way. That advances the trust. So that's another way to move towards agreement. Often we end, in these deadlocks or impasse environments because trust is lacking in the deal, and we think that we can fix trust at the table, but you can't fix trust at the table. Typically, you have to build trust away from the table. It takes time. So that's the second point, is really exploring the interest. And then the third one is get ready to make a concession. So if you want to move this thing forward, if you want to break this deadlock, you're going to have to offer a concession. But think about a series of concessions you can make. And remember, they don't have to be big concessions. It can be small concessions. Just your willingness to make a concession, any concession, signals to your counterpart that you're prepared to move in their direction. And it's the most important signal that you can send them in terms of harnessing the principle of reciprocity and increasing the likelihood that they'll respond in kind and offer a concession, and you're away to the races and the negotiation continues. Hope that helps you.